I'm here with David Cristello. He is the CEO and founder of Jetpack Workflow. I've known David for many years within the industry, and one of the things that I love about him is that he is a marketer and a workflow productivity nerd. And that's why we've got him here today, because we talk about marketing a lot on this podcast and our various platforms, but we don't spend a lot of time on the sort of things that David is going to bring to us. He's built an incredible company. They've been on the Inc. 5000 twice. I know they were recently named on it. What's the reality, David? Twice, once?
Once.
But that's the top 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. And it started in a spare bedroom some years, like 5 years ago, to the Inc. 5000, top 5,000 company, fastest growing, gets a lot of private equity attention when you hit that list. And they're a software company, and they're in the tax and accounting space, mostly around making sure that you get your client work out the door as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. And so, I'm recording this. We're in the middle of busy season right now. And so we're just taking this time while most of our clients, our shared clients, are sort of head down, super crazy. I'm recording this right after the corporate deadline. So when you get it in your earbuds, or however you listen to this, it's probably a few days after that. But they've got 7,000 customers, 18 countries, 5 million completed client projects on time. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about what they do and kind of how the recurring client management software that they've built and what that means for accountants and tax professionals. But I want you to know that, like, we're about to embark on nerdery about workflow stuff. So, David, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, Nate, thanks for being here. And yeah, I mean, just a brief intro about me and the company. So as Nate mentioned, founder CEO of Jetpack Workflow, we're really focused on helping accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, and tax firms make sure that client work gets done on time every time. And how we do that is we give you a simple set of tools to automatically track all the important recurring deadlines and due dates for your clients, manage your team with more visibility and control, so that these important work items don't fall through the cracks.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Tell me about that. What are like, give me the genesis of the company and kind of what was the big problem that you wanted to solve when you started this software company?
Yeah, so when we started, and I really came from the outside in, and I was interviewing a lot of accounting firms about what was keeping them up at night, what was stressful about running an accounting firm. And some version of checklist management, due date management kept coming up over and over and over again. And and even at that time, it's just kind of like 100x since then. But even at that time, there's a lot of generic task management tools, and there's a lot of really advanced CRM tools. And
Asana, all
oh my
that
gosh,
stuff,
Asana,
Basecamp, blah 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 blah.
Trello, Basecamp, Todoist, Wunderlist, Smartsheet, I think was even around. And nobody really felt, or the majority of people I talked to didn't feel like that was really meant for their firm, because you couldn't do something like, how's a client profile anywhere? And it's like, well, these are client-centric businesses, and I can't even have a client profile in these tools. It's quite obvious they weren't really designed for somebody like me. Right. Client-centric tools are typically CRMs, which were built for salespeople and sales pipelines, not for recurring client management. And then you kind of had your legacy competitors in the field. I won't badmouth any specific ones, but they kind of had the classic challenges of adoption. They weren't cloud-based at the time. They'd nickel and dime you. They were kind of overbuilt for what a lot of firms needed. And so the general genesis of it was, what's the simple way to manage all these recurring deadlines so you don't miss anything?
Mm-hmm. And so you started in your spare bedroom, and that's kind of famous in the industry.
Yeah, you either get a garage or a bedroom. There's no other place you can start a software company.
But you grew really fast. And tell me why. So I'm gonna give you permission to be self-promotional here, David. Tell me why your clients kind of so quickly glommed on to what you guys were providing.
I think it was because it was one of the earlier players in something that was simple and cloud based,
Hmm.
and it really felt contextual to this industry. Like we were pretty early on, like starting the Growing Your Firm podcast, and
Right.
we were pretty clear about, the genesis of this was for accountants, bookkeeping, and tax providers. And there's like small things in the product you can just tell they're kind of built for the industry. Managing extension deadlines, pretty seamlessly out of the box. It just tells you it's kind of built for people that manage tax services. And so I would say a mixture of being, cloud-based, very simple. Then, kind of part two was, we hit on an early ad platform that nobody else was really marketing on in 2016. So it's like, had a good product, and then we raised a little bit of capital, and then we found a channel where our market was there. Nobody else was kind of marketing on that
Talking
channel.
podcasts.
No, actually Facebook ads,
Oh, okay.
2016.
You were one of those newsfeed gurus from the beginning, huh?
Yeah, so that was early on. I will say it's probably not where I would start today for as a
A little
software
different
company.
now, right? Yeah.
It's a little different. There's still interesting things there, but I think there's a lot. Like it's kind of fascinating. I don't know how you want to nerd out on this, but like
No,
with
nerd.
with the iOS update,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of funny, right? And so you're kind of seeing the uh you're degrading the pixel universe in some ways. There's going to be the next level pixel and the next level tracker or whatever, but kind of now what we're seeing is this acceleration of what feels like old school internet advertising. So let's sponsor a webinar, let's sponsor a podcast, let's sponsor a newsletter.
An
And
email blast, right?
the email blast is back, and you kind of see newsletters started to grow again with new platforms like Substack, allowing New York Times writers to say, look, I don't want to write for the New York Times, I'm just going to start my own email list, get paid for it. And so you've kind of seen this new long tail of creators, which means attention is now diversified once again. It used to be, when you looked at the trends from 2016 to probably 2020, 2021, it's Facebook, it's Google. Now you see Amazon's ad platform is really interesting. You see podcast platforms as being really interesting. You see more digital events that have sponsorship opportunities. And it's kind of fun. It's a fun convergence. And so if I was spending today with some money, it'd be a little bit different.
We could talk about this the whole time, but I'm not sure that our listeners would really vibe on these various marketing channels, since most of them are accountants and folks who are running small kind of localized businesses. But I do want to talk about the email thing for a moment. Obviously, that's near and dear to my heart, as you know. Are you guys doing a lot of email stuff, like as a channel for acquiring new clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like, we've gone really back and forth. So email's been really big for us. It will continue to be really big for us. There is, the whole.
And for the record, you are one of the better email marketers. It's actually how we got to know each other. I don't remember if you or I reached out first. I think you did. But I might have been me, because you guys do email so well. And you've got such a gift, David, of like communicating with clarity and humanity, but also authority. And that combination is really kind of rare, I think, in the marketplace. But you've got this marketer's perspective that is human, and you're not a hype artist, and I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, it's still very big for us. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let me just interrupt and say, how would somebody get on your email list? Just go to jetpackworkflow.com.
Yeah, I mean, you're either going to start a free trial if something like the software is appealing, or at the footer of our website, we have a couple things. So we have 32 workflow templates as kind of spreadsheet templates. So you can get that. We have the Double Your Accounting Firm book, which you can get a free digital version. We have, and I think hiring guide in our footer. So there's a couple things you can like opt into. If you check out our blog, like there's opt-ins over there as well. And then usually what happens is we'll send you some follow-up emails, which is critical, right? I mean, I know you probably talk about this a lot. And then like many, something we've been consistently publishing since maybe about 12 months ago is a weekly newsletter, update on the podcast. and some industry articles, some things we've written, items like that. And for me, it's really about how do you make sure the community you're serving, for us as accountants, for accountants listening, it's your clients, don't naturally drift away from who you are and what you're doing. And whether it's a monthly email or weekly email, it's just a way for you to stay in touch and stay top of mind. So I'm always a fan of email.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the things you're seeing in the marketplace. What's like the biggest mistake that accounting firms are making these days from a productivity and kind of workflow standpoint that you are seeing?
Well, I think there's two things. The one I will always mention, because it's so important, is all of the false starts that keep happening in accounting firms.
Right.
We are so excited and anxious to get ready on a piece of client work that we will start even when we don't have all the information together, because we just want to start moving the ball forward.
Mhm.
And that creates a lot of confusion when you then go to hand off your step maybe to somebody else. So if your task is 80% of the done and you check it off, and and you don't have all the right information, or you don't have all the client information on file, it becomes a really hot mess. So we always like to say, start when ready. Make sure you have all your materials together, either internally or you have everything you needed from the client. It's been checked, it's been reviewed, then you can really start. And when you do that, you can better set the expectations for your client on when they're going to get something back.
Right.
We run into a lot of trouble, and where turnaround times are missed or deadlines are missed is all those kind of gotchas that come up in the middle of it. And one of the biggest gotchas is, the client, we thought they submitted everything, they really didn't, or we started when they submitted 50% of the stuff, but we thought it was enough to just get going. I will say that the kind of the second mistake is, passing the baton between team members. So I haven't talked a lot about this, but it's something I've, like you said, you're going to nerd out on it, become passionate about recently, which is when you're working with a team member, or when you delegate something to a staff member, or a staff member completes a task and the new staff member needs to pick it up, there's actually a task between the tasks, which is confirming you're able to do it.
Right.
And confirming you have the knowledge and capacity.
Proper delegation, systematized rather than dumping.
Yeah. And so it could be like, in our system, it could be a task that's sent over to you. And, that team member needs to say, like, do I understand what's expected of me? And do I have the time to actually do it? And do I have all the materials to do it? So there's actually kind of like, and this is not all the time. Sometimes you just, exactly what's going on. You're just going, you're going. But there are times where you're like, that person, that confirmation that something has been received is a step in and of itself. You don't have to mark it as a step in a system or whatever, but you just need to acknowledge that it's real. And the other thing that's kind of the work between the work is all these systems now have some level of collaboration in them. So you could talk to another team member, you can send them a note. Well, in the profession, we really try to optimize our utilization. We want to hit, 80%, 85% utilization. I think where it gets kind of problematic, and what's hard to really account for, is when you're collaborating with a team member. Let's say you are stuck, and I feel like you, Nate, you have the information I need. So I send you a message in the system, you get an email. Well, guess what? If I'm asking you a question, that's more than just a question. That is a task. That is a piece of work. You have to think about that. Oh, that's right. I did talk to that client. I uploaded that file into ShareFile. Let me go grab that link for that person. Oh, wait, this is an old updated PDF. So let me call the client and get the latest one. And so now you've actually taken on a task without realizing it. This is a piece of work. Maybe it'll take 30 minutes. Maybe it'll take 4 hours. And it's hard to represent that in workflow, but this passing the baton is really important. People need to recognize that there's some level of capacity needs to be thought of in this kind of passing the baton world.
And how have you solved that within Jetpack?
So this is a continuing work in progress, but I will say, we do have, very strict task dependencies, relational task dependencies. And so we do have task triggers. One will not show up to be due until it's the prior one's been complete. And so we try to have the best visibility when it comes to what's the work you can actually take on.
Right.
The other thing is we have a feature in there. We it's customizable labels. And so if you're waiting on something from a client, put that color coded label on the job, waiting on client, and you can run reports and views around that label. Or if you're
And
waiting on
that'll give your like client service reps or account managers, whatever, the data they need to be able to like pester the client as
yeah,
needed, and not just have the system kind of send their like easily ignorable notifications.
yeah, because I mean, I think like software should always try to reduce the admin work, but
Mhm,
yeah, there's always going to be a component of, you know, client service manager needs to run report, what's everything due this Friday or due end of this month that's still waiting on a client.
mhm,
And great, like every Monday, let's just run through that list, give them a call, shoot them a
mhm,
text message.
mhm,
Maybe I need to loop in the owner if they have a good relationship with that client. Like
mhm,
let's try to, reduce this list from 12 to 8, to
mhm,
4 to 0 by the end of the month. And
mhm,
so I think, these ways to simply label work as being stuck, I think is really important. I think very tight and stringent test dependencies is really important.
mhm.
But and I can't, you know, disclose a ton of this, but we're still thinking about this problem. We're still thinking about ways to solve it and improve upon it.
Right, right. There's new horizons in this particular area, as we automate non-automatable tasks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and the where software and market, at least from my standpoint, where marketing is going, at least I don't know about like task management software that you run, but where marketing is going is figuring out a way to automate non-automatable things. Like, how can you create structures that enable a human connection more and more and more, rather than just purely creating this like robotic machine, because people are tired of that. They want the human interaction as efficiently and as real as possible. Um, that's
Yeah.
that's quite a challenge. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, that's a really interesting concept. I've never really thought about the task between the task, and what delegation actually means for the delegator and for the delegatee. Kind of how you handle that process.
And
Um,
a very simple non-technology solution to this, which a lot of our firms have adopted, is some version of the daily huddle.
right.
What did you get done? What's on your plate? Where are you stuck?
The Scrum kind of model.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every day, 10 minutes with your team or minimum weekly. You could say, hey, what's on your plate for this week? If it's midweek, you say what you get done so far and where are you blocked, where are you stuck, or what are you nervous about completing that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's good. So, zooming out even more, aside from your software, like what are some of the issues that you're seeing in the industry as kind of like trends that you're tracking, and things that you are kind of projecting for the next couple of years? I mean, you've been somebody, you've hosted big events within the industry, and you are somebody who's, I know, very much on Twitter because I follow you and I see your likes and what have you. Um,
Oh no. Oh,
um,
no.
I know it's not always pretty, but I'm just kidding. Oh, it's great. No, it is. I don't mean to imply anything by that statement, because you're a great follow on Twitter. Um, but what are you seeing? Like, where are you seeing the accounting and tax industry going in the next couple of years that is interesting to you, that you think our listeners could hear?
Yeah, I mean, oh boy, there's three that come to mind. We'll see if we can get through them. I mean, I think first and foremost, and this was already in motion, but it's really been accelerated, is just the complete packaging of services.
Hmm.
Like the subscription service is here; it's here to stay. And the more you can build in kind of a recurring payment, recurring profile to all of your service offerings, the better. And
Do you
so
find that a lot of your clients don't have that?
I think it's still mixed, and I
Huh.
still hear people trying to kind of fine tune what that really means for their firm.
Yeah.
I think the world in which you need to stay. This is a good thing to try is over.
Yeah.
But it's like, have you reached the majority of your clients with a subscription service that is really unique and competitive in the market?
Yeah, I
And
will say this just for you listeners. Here, at Tax Pro Marketer, we're a multi-million dollar agency, what have you. I'm personally paying $1,500 a month for tax and accounting, actually $3,000 a month if you combine the two, tax and accounting. And if that blows your mind, I know a lot of people who are willing to pay, those like 4 figures a month for your services. And so the recurring model is really a valuable pivot if you've not made that pivot. So
Well, you highlighted something I think is really important too. It's like, we'll see firms that will make that pivot, but they'll do hundreds of dollars a month. And it's like, the opportunity to have your average client pay you 5 figures a year is
mhm,
out there, and it's
mhm,
tremendous. And
mhm,
they're sitting in your client base right now,
mhm,
whether you realize it or not. And so I think that's a massive opportunity, is to think about how you package these things up to be more valuable, and whether that's niching down or adding more services or just being a little bit more proactive with who you are as a
mhm.
firm.
Your
I think
marketing. Yep.
that's there. So if you made the transition, but you're still, you know, low 4 figures as a yearly contract with your client, you have so much room to grow. Like
You're leaving a lot on the table.
ton on the table. I would say the second thing is just the overall structure and DNA of what an accounting firm looks like from a team perspective is accelerating as well. And so
Mhm.
we've talked to a lot of folks, and I don't even know, are we in the pandemic anymore? I don't know. Post
Yeah.
pandemic, middle pandemic, tail end of pandemic, who
Whatever
knows?
you want to say.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's a lot of people on every part of the spectrum, I think, on that right now.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, through the great resignation and the work from home that happened, we started seeing a lot more, obviously, remote workers come up, and then we saw just a lot more contractors, part time, hourly. Um, Onshore, offshores continue to increase, but like the big thing is like these platforms, these freelance platforms where you can plug in a tax preparer,
Mhm.
working in 4 states over, that's doing great work, and you'll meet up with them once or twice a year, if ever. And
Mhm.
so, for some firms that might only represent 10 or 20% of their workforce, and for others it might represent 90% of the workforce. But I think over time there's going to be some virtual, probably consultant, freelancer person that's augmenting your capacity for your firm. And I've continued to see the push away from kind of full-time employment, both from the firm, and again, this is not everybody, but both from the firm, and then also, oddly enough, from the employees. They were like,
Mhm.
well, I want to I want an hourly gig. I want to work 20 to 30 hours a week, and
Yeah.
then work on my podcast on the side, or do whatever,
Mhm.
whatever side hustle they want to do. And so I just think it's a really different workforce we're about to encounter, even as we go back into the office and everything kind of, quote unquote, returns. You're still going to have that augmentation of the workforce that is virtual, that is contract, or that is part-time.
Yeah, the era of the 40-hour a week kind of like, you know, full-time practice it might be past us.
Yeah, because
it-
every in-office firm, their workforce has now become dramatically more competitive. So let's say
Mhm.
you are hiring, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, have an accounting firm here. Let's say we're hiring, you have to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, pre-pandemic, my employee pool was, people that were looking for Pittsburgh would probably work here most of the time. Now you see some non-trivial percentage of that workforce saying, well, I'm going to apply to in-office as well as virtual, and I'm going to see what's the best offer I can get.
Mhm.
So it's like my applicant, and some of them would say, I'm only going to do remote.
Right.
And so my total applicant pool has decreased. And then the ones that are here, my competition has increased, because now I'm probably competing with other remote firms. And maybe
Right.
the job applicant is like, I don't know if I want remote, I want in person. I could say, even for us as a tech company last year, we are hiring, and we had applicants that were like, yeah, I'm interviewing in person in Georgia, and I'm looking at remote, right? And we're like,
Mhm.
oh, that's interesting, right? So you have a lot of people that are kind of looking for both.
Well, the flip
Or-
side of that coin is that you also the world is opening up overseas as well, for a lot of practices. The Philippines, Pakistan. There's lots of countries that are kind of like leaning into this workforce, kind of like remote into the United States, kind of forward, uh, like emphasis. Like I know in the marketing agency world that I'm in, the Philippines is like smoking hot right now because of the number of native English or not native, but like from the
Yeah.
cradle English speakers who are really tech forward. And we have 4 employees in the Philippines right now. And the same, I know a variety of companies in India, Pakistan, Philippines that are bringing in accounting and tax workers into practices, from overseas, and you're paying them in a different scale, et cetera. And so, like, yes, there's more competition domestically, but there's sort of this broader pool available if you're able to bridge those gaps, and kind of like put your feet in the water there. So it's really interesting. So the workforce is changing in the industry. The billing is changing. Are you seeing anything on the client side? Like, what are your users reporting related to kind of client work and trends that they're seeing there?
I mean, yeah, again, I'm not sure if any of these are going to be like mind-blowingly new, but I would say the client expectation for a consumer-esque experience has never been higher. So if you had clients that maybe weren't super tech savvy, well, they've now reached whatever next level of tech savviness is, because
Yeah,
they're used
had to
to,
be.
yeah, they're used to Microsoft Teams, they're used to Zoom, they're used to Google Hangouts, they're used to Drive, they're used to food delivery services, they're used to a greater reliance on their smartphone to receive things. And all of these experiences have become in many ways frictionless. And so the client firm experience, I think the ones who win really try to think about how to remove friction from the client experience and how to make sure that expectations are set very, very clearly for them. And it could be done through obviously software, and there's softwares that help with that. It could also be done like one of my favorite tactics. One of my favorite tactics, one of our firms did, they was through our software, the way they tag their clients, but this was even pre-pandemic, they interview their clients. Do you want us to call you? Do you want us to text you? Do you want us to email you? What is your preferred communication method? And, and if we get your, mobile number on file, all we ask is you respond to us in a timely manner within a couple
Yeah.
business days if we follow your preferred method of communication. And so I think the clients are both going to expect less friction. If you're emailing your clients over PDF organizer, times are going to be tough in the future, right? Like you're going to fall behind because you're adding friction to the world. They have to download the PDF, they have to fill it out. You have to find ways to just make it easier, faster, simpler, and you don't have to overcomplicate the matter. You can use secure survey forms, you can use secure portals, you can, whatever you need to do, but don't email over PDF requests, right? or whatever it may be, right? Do things that make your client's life easier. And then last but not least, like the clients, I mean, they just are pounding out the door for more, how am I going to do in the future question.
Yes.
I was going to say advisory.
KPI projections. Yes.
Give me the projections. Let me understand my cash flow. Let me understand my financing opportunities. Let me understand how I'm benchmarking in my industry. We are about to, I think, go through an explosion of entrepreneurship. Of course, I'm always thinking this, but explosion of entrepreneurship. The pandemic was highly disruptive. We have a whole generation that's been raised on Shark Tank and things like that. You now have the long tail of creative commerce coming alive in Snapchat and Instagram. It's easier than ever to spin up products.
TikTok.
And I think there's going to be a really interesting wave of entrepreneurship. But with that, and especially coming through the pandemic, there's going to be something ingrained in all of us that is more thoughtful about our cash flow, more thoughtful about our future projections, more thoughtful about our benchmarks, what we've lined up. And so I do think that opportunities, we're going to see an explosion over the next couple of years.
All right. Well, we're coming up against our time, David, and I know that you've given already so much. I want to ask you one last question. Like, if there's one big concept that, regardless if somebody uses your software, they're an accounting practitioner, tax practitioner, what's sort of like a fundamental building block of a workflow process that is like a little hinge that swings a big door for the practitioner? Like, what's something that, like, if you wish that you could like wave a magic wand and accountants and tax practitioners could sort of like get into their DNA of their practice, what would it be?
always look at the process before you look at the people.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
what I mean by that, and like let's take the really bad apples aside. You will have an issue with a team member. You will have an issue with the client. Do not start. I mean, you triage the issue, but say, what is the process that delivered this outcome?
Hmm.
The team member didn't know what to do. They dropped the ball. They missed the deadline. The client called upset. Your inclination as an owner is to go in firefighter mode or Superman or Superwoman mode, solve it, save the
Yep.
day, go on to the next fire.
Right. Fire the employee that messed it up,
Oh,
whatever.
I gotta
Yep.
get rid of them. I don't know
Yep.
that, I think when I say most of the problems you can kind of point and say is what's the process that led us here? Let's the
Right.
workflow and let's look at the process at first.
Where's the friction?
Where's the friction? Or it's like this person missed the deadline. Okay, did they know they missed the deadline? Were they
Yeah.
overburdened? Did they know what was going on? Did they understand the urgency of the deadline? How was it communicated? What is my visibility into knowing something's at risk? Client called upset. Why are they upset? Did we miss a critical piece of information during intake? Like, whatever it is. And so think about the process. Always go back to the process, because that's how you get leverage as you grow your firm. If you always think it's like a people person, it's a people problem, and you continue to add more people or shuffle more people, you're not building any leverage in your firm. Process is your leverage. And if you sharpen that and refine that, that's how you get more freedom and more profitability in your firm.
I love it, man. That's really good. I think a lot of people are so quick to blame people in the midst of it and quick to blame clients, when in fact, look in the mirror and realize that you've created your client problems. You might blame it on like bad behaving clients, but in fact, you've fostered an environment in which the behavior is accepted. So, so where can people find you? Where can they get connected to your software? How can we kind of like get people connected to your solutions?
Yeah, well, if you're struggling to meet deadlines, you're struggling to have visibility, I highly recommend check out jetpackworkflow.com. We have a 14-day free trial. We'll work with you to get you set up to see if it's a good fit for you, learn a little bit more about your firm. You can start a free trial, or you can just book a demo with us and we'll connect with you about the platform. If you want to investigate this world a little bit more, we have the 32 templates. So that's kind of your jumpstart to building out your processes. That's at jetpackworkflow.com in the footer. And like I mentioned, and Nate, you have a profile in the book as well. If you want to get a free digital copy of the Double Your Firm book, that's at jetpackworkflow.com in the footer as well. So check out.
I'm in that book.
You're in that book. Our interviews
Hell
in that book. So it's a must read then.
That's awesome. Well, David, thank you for your time. This is awesome. It is always such a pleasure to connect with you. And I'm really thankful for your voice in the industry and for our clients to take a listen. And I do highly recommend what they've built there. I mean, building a company to the Inc. 5000 is not something to sneeze at. And what David and his small team have built is remarkable. And I would stack it up against some of these huge corporate players in the industry. And I think if you are a fast moving, entrepreneurial minded practice owner, then check it out. All right. Thank you. Good to see you, David.
Thanks, Nate.
All right, buddy.